I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. We're keeping Christmas small this year. Mom, just immediate family. I held the phone against my ear, trying to make sense of my son's words. Immediate family. Yet here I was, alone in my kitchen with a cooling cup of Earl Grey beside me. Oh, I said softly, my heart dropping like a stone in a still pond. Of course, Ryan. Thanks for being so cool about it, he replied, relief evident in his voice. You know, this year's just been a lot. We need something low-key. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Sure, take care. He hung up. That was it. The quiet that followed felt unnatural, not the comfortable kind that comes after meaningful conversation, but the kind that presses against your chest, that echoes in the places where once there was laughter. I looked at the other mug on the table, Thomas's mug, my husband's. It's been 17 years since he passed, but I still set his place sometimes, especially in December, especially during moments like this. I've always been a Christmas woman. I was the one who baked the cookies, hung the lights, chose the tree. I sewed little red stockings for each family member and handwrote cards even when my fingers ached. It wasn't out of obligation. It was love. Love that I thought mattered. I had already bought the gifts this year in November during the early sales. I had found a professional sketch set for Olivia, a science kit for Noah, a sleek leather briefcase for Ryan, and a handmade aroma lamp for Sophia, the kind she once admired in a magazine I saw on her coffee table. Each one picked with care, wrapped with gold ribbons, and tucked in boxes labeled "Ready." And now they were staying home without me. I walked to the living room, the one they helped me paint last year. Ryan mostly supervising, Sophia mostly scrolling on her phone. I'd thought it was a shared project. Now it felt more like charity in hindsight. The tree stood in the corner, lights off. I hadn't decorated yet. I'd been waiting for the kids to visit, to let Olivia place the angel on top like she always did. I sat in my recliner, pulled the wool blanket over my lap, and looked out the window. A neighbor was putting up light-up reindeer and a plastic Santa that wobbled in the wind. Children ran across the street with red cheeks and candy canes. Everyone was preparing for something except me. I thought I might cry, but no, there were no tears. Not tonight. Just that odd pressing silence again and a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Not sadness, not quite anger. Something colder and much, much clearer. The next morning, I woke up early as always. Old habits are hard to break, and I've had a lifetime of early risings for school lunches, Sunday roasts, surprise visits, and Christmas mornings that began before sunrise. But this morning, I stayed in bed longer than usual. There was no urgency, no noise in the hallway, no little feet running in slippers, no reason to get up and preheat the oven. Still, my hands moved on their own, brushing the blanket aside, finding the slippers, walking the familiar path to the kitchen, as if Christmas were still coming, just a little late. I made tea and sat at the window. My front yard looked just like always, a crooked snowman built by neighborhood kids, icicles forming over the gutters, footprints scattered like confetti. But inside me, something felt unfamiliar. I'd hosted Christmas every year since 1973 through sickness, tight budgets, snowstorms, and one year when the turkey caught fire. Didn't matter. Everyone still came, even if they were late, even if they forgot to bring dessert, even if they didn't help clean up. They came. And now I wasn't even asked. I thought about how it used to be. Ryan would arrive first, always early, always checking if the parking was clear. Sophia came later, arms full of gifts that looked like they came from catalogs, always wrapped in gold and navy, not a speck of red in sight. Olivia and Noah would come running in. eyes wide, asking if the stockings were up, if the cinnamon rolls were warm. I still remember the way Olivia used to lean into me when we read The Night Before Christmas together. I remember Noah's squeals when he opened his first bike, but those memories felt distant now, like someone else's family, like a movie I'd once watched and forgotten. The house was too quiet. Even the refrigerator's hum seemed louder. I glanced at the hallway. The guest room door was closed. The same guest room Ryan had insisted I keep ready. In case we want to stay over sometime, Mom. They never stayed. They barely sat. It hit me all at once how the visits had become shorter each year. At first, they'd spend full days, then it was lunch, then just dropping by, then not at all. The last few Christmases, I was the one driving across town. I'd sit politely in their pristine kitchen, hand over my carefully chosen gifts, and watch as they unwrapped them without really seeing them. Sophia always smiled, always said thank you, but her eyes were elsewhere. Ryan checked his phone between bites. Olivia and Noah were glued to their screens. One year, I made an old family recipe, meat pies my mother used to bake. Sophia took a single bite and said, "Oh, that's very traditional." She didn't finish it. I told myself it was fine, that times were changing, that kids didn't understand home-cooked meals or hand-knit scarves. But now I saw it for what it was: distance, not physical, emotional, calculated. I stood up slowly and walked to the sideboard. There, tucked in a drawer, were all the photos from past Christmases, dozens of them. Ryan in a paper crown, Olivia opening gifts in her pajamas, Thomas carving turkey with his crooked smile. I flipped through them one by one. Then I noticed something. In every photo, I was standing in the background, holding the tray, carrying the plates, cleaning in the corner, smiling, always smiling, but never seated, never really seen. I closed the album and slid it back into the drawer. My hands lingered on the wood for a moment before I turned away. Traditions. That's what I thought I'd built. But maybe I was the only one who remembered them. The guest room in Ryan and Sophia's house was painted a soft gray, with white curtains and a framed quote over the bed, "Family is everything." I remember standing in that room the first time Sophia showed it to me. She'd flung the door open proudly and said, "And here's your little corner, Margaret, for sleepovers or long visits. We wanted you to feel welcome." I smiled then, genuinely touched. I even brought over a pair of house slippers and an extra toothbrush the next week. I folded my nightgown into the dresser drawer just in case. That was 2 years ago. I've never slept there. Never even sat on the bed. I noticed after a while that whenever I visited, the room was always full of something else. Holiday decorations, unopened boxes, Ryan's golf clubs. One time, it was their new exercise bike. "Just temporary," Sophia had said, brushing it off with a smile. It didn't feel temporary. I stopped bringing my overnight bag. They live in a house I helped them buy, $50,000 toward the down payment taken from my retirement fund after Thomas passed. Ryan had said it was an investment in togetherness. I wanted to believe him. I signed the check without hesitation. I didn't even ask for repayment. They promised I'd always have a place there, and yet this Christmas, I wasn't invited. I sat at my kitchen table looking at the Christmas card I'd received from them last week. It had a photo of the four of them in matching pajamas in front of a fireplace. "Not mine," Sophia's calligraphy said. "Wishing you a warm and joyful holiday season." No invitation. No mention of dinner. Just warm wishes from afar. I flipped it over, blank on the back. I thought about the first house Ryan and Sophia bought. It was smaller, older, closer to my neighborhood. Back then, Sophia would ask for my help, choosing curtains, organizing the pantry, minding the kids. She seemed to appreciate me, but over time, things shifted. Sophia's smiles became tighter, her compliments more polite, her requests fewer. I once overheard her on the phone saying, "My mother-in-law means well. She just doesn't really fit in with our circle." That was 2 Christmases ago. She hadn't meant for me to hear it, but I did. I never mentioned it. Now I wish I had. They talk about inclusion, about family values. They buy books on mindfulness and donate to holiday charities, but they can't make room at their own table for the woman who kept their lights on more than once. I'm not naive. I know Sophia has always found me quaint, too simple, too baking soda for cleaning, and not enough essential oils. I don't belong in their curated version of life. Still, it hurts. I stood, walked down the hall, and opened my own guest room door. It's nothing special. Just a twin bed with a crocheted blanket and a tiny lamp Thomas wired himself. But I've hosted so many people there over the years. Friends, neighbors, even Ryan once when he fought with Sophia and needed space for the night. It smells like lavender and old wood and something warm I can't quite name. I sat on the edge of the bed and folded my hands. They built a room for me that they never intended me to use. But here in my own home, every room has memory, real ones, messy ones full of noise and food and accidental love. And maybe that's the difference. Maybe they built a house, but I built a home. I told myself I wasn't going to do it this year. No shopping, no wrapping, no digging through flyers for the best deals. Not after that call. But old habits don't die quietly. So there I was, standing in the middle of the department store, coat unbuttoned, scarf unraveling, list in hand, the same store I visited every December for nearly 50 years, the same soft carols playing overhead, the same garlands twisted around every checkout lane, and me still here, still playing the part. Olivia liked sketching, so I found the upgraded marker set she'd mentioned back in July. Dual tips, hundreds of colors, a case that zipped all the way around like a suitcase. Noah had started reading graphic novels, so I picked up the latest in that series with the strange talking cat. I didn't understand it, but I knew he'd light up. I even found a little jar of imported bath salts for Sophia, rose and sandalwood. Expensive, delicate, pointless. For Ryan, I hesitated. What do you give a man who doesn't have time to call you? I wandered the men's section, fingers brushing over wool scarves, leather gloves, cuff links behind glass. I settled on a pair of wireless earbuds, top of the line, something sleek and practical, something modern, something that said, "I'm trying to stay in your world." I carried the items to the register. The young girl behind the counter smiled and said, "Got a big Christmas planned?" I blinked. For a moment, I wasn't sure how to answer. "No," I said finally, "just keeping it small." She nodded, not noticing the pause. Everyone's scaling back this year. Family's enough, right? I didn't reply. On the way home, the weight of the bags felt heavier than usual. I used to feel proud walking back with my arms full. Proof of love, preparation, care. Now they just felt like burdens. Proof of something I wasn't ready to name. At home, I set the bags on the dining table and sat down beside them. One by one, I unwrapped the items from their glossy store bags. I folded them into tissue paper, tucked them into boxes. I tied each one with ribbon. I even wrote their names on the tags like I always did. Ryan, Sophia, Olivia, Noah. It felt automatic, familiar, painfully so. I stared at the stack when I finished. 4 boxes, 4 ghosts. Because that's what they were. Not gifts, but echoes. Echoes of a woman still trying to earn a place she already should have had. I looked at the small drawer in the hallway where I kept the old cards, hand-drawn ones from the kids, messy scrawls that said, "Love you, Grandma, and you make the best cookies." I ran my fingers across them. Then I looked back at the boxes. This year, they wouldn't be carried to someone else's tree. Not this time. I placed the finished boxes neatly on the edge of the credenza, each one a quiet monument to something unspoken. The gold and silver paper glinted in the afternoon light, ribbons still crisp, tags written in my best cursive. There was a time when I couldn't wait to see them opened. Not because I wanted thanks, though I won't lie, those mattered too, but because I loved the moment their eyes lit up, the surprise, the pure joy. That's what Christmas meant to me. But now they sat there untouched, unclaimed, not forgotten, just unnecessary. I stood staring at them for a long time, then did something I've never done in my 78 years. I picked up one of the boxes, Ryan's, and carried it upstairs. In the hallway closet, behind old linens and a broken fan I never got around to throwing out, there was a heavy plastic bin I used to store wrapping paper and ribbons. I pulled it out, lifted the lid, and placed the box carefully inside. Then I went back down for the others. Sophia's bath salts, Olivia's marker set, Noah's comic book. All of them fit in the bin snug like memories packed too tightly. I closed the lid. They weren't getting these gifts. Not because I wanted to punish them, not even because I was angry, but because they didn't think I existed outside of obligation. They'd built a life where I was a convenience, something to call upon when the roof leaked or the babysitter canceled. But not someone you miss, not someone you make room for. And this year they'd made that painfully clear. We're keeping Christmas small this year, just immediate family. That sentence wouldn't leave me. Not the words exactly, but the way he'd said them, casual, rehearsed, as if he'd been preparing it, as if he knew I might be hurt, but hoped that saying it kindly would somehow make it fine. I thought about calling him, about saying something, about reminding him of all the years I showed up, the birthdays I never missed, the nights I sat up sewing Halloween costumes because Sophia didn't have time, the Saturdays I brought groceries when their bank account ran low. But what would I even say? "Hi, I just wanted to let you know I exist." No, I wouldn't call. Instead, I walked to the living room, pulled the old wool throw over my knees, and sat with a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Across the room, the Christmas tree stood undecorated. I'd been saving that for when the kids visited, for Olivia's touch with the ornaments, for Noah's habit of hanging everything too low, for Ryan's inevitable teasing, "Mom, this tree is as short as you are." But there wouldn't be any visits. Not this year, so the tree would stay bare. Maybe that was better anyway. I took a sip of the cold tea and let the silence fill the space where joy used to live. There was no sadness, not really. It was something else, a settling, like dust after the wind. Every year, without fail, there was a card, sometimes late, sometimes smudged, but always there, a folded square with glitter that stuck to your fingers. A scripted, "Merry Christmas, Mom," across the front and something scribbled inside, even when the words were impersonal. "Hope you're well. Love, Ryan and family." I kept them. I have a drawer full of them, tucked beneath old bills and recipe clippings. This year, the mailbox stayed empty. Well, not completely. The usual flyers came, all bold letters and discounts, 40% off turkey roasts, last-minute stocking stuffers. A local politician sent a folded sheet with a photo of his smiling family and matching sweaters. I stood at the counter sorting through it, half expecting something to slip out. An envelope addressed in Sophia's neat handwriting or one of Olivia's sticker-covered creations. But there was nothing. I turned the stack over, checked again. Just junk. I looked at the calendar. December 22nd. Too late for postal delays. Too soon to pretend they hadn't simply forgotten or ignored. I carried the stack to the recycling bin and stood with my hand over the lid. Then I paused, pulled out the card from the councilman, and ripped it down the center. It wasn't his fault, of course, but something in me needed the sound, that soft tearing of paper that felt like acknowledgement, like proof that something somewhere had snapped. The worst part wasn't the silence. I've lived with silence. I sleep in it. I wake up to it. No, the worst part was the clarity. They hadn't forgotten the card. They had decided it wasn't needed. I made a sandwich I didn't want and sat down at the kitchen table. The tree still stood undecorated in the corner of the living room. The smell of pine barely clung to the air anymore. I took a bite of the sandwich and stared at the wall. A faded painting of a barn in winter hung there. Thomas had found it at a garage sale 30 years ago. He used to say it reminded him of his grandfather's land, though he'd never actually been there. "I just know," he said once, "that it felt like this. That's what memory does. It fills in the blanks, makes you believe in something solid that maybe never was." I'd been filling in blanks for years, giving Ryan the benefit of the doubt, telling myself Sophia meant well, believing the kids were just shy, just busy, just teenagers. But a forgotten card says more than 1,000 explanations. It says, "You weren't even a thought." I looked out the window. The neighbor's inflatable Santa had collapsed sideways during the night. It lay slumped against the snow, face pressed into the lawn. I thought absurdly. Same. I set my sandwich down, half eaten, and got up. In the hall closet, I pulled out the old photo box. Not the albums. Those were curated. This one was different. It held the unchosen moments, stray snapshots, blurry images, pictures that never made it to frames. I sifted through them, fingers grazing corners, pausing when I reached one from 1996. Ryan holding baby Olivia in a ridiculous red onesie, both of them laughing at something off camera. I had taken that photo. I remember it clearly. They'd been staying with me for a week that Christmas. Ryan between jobs, money tight. I cooked every day, watched Olivia so they could rest. We wrapped secondhand toys together and made them feel like treasures. No one remembers that now. I set the photo aside. Then another Ryan at 16 standing beside the first car I helped him buy. I co-signed the loan when Thomas said we couldn't afford it. I made the payments when Ryan forgot. That car was wrecked within the year. Then the wedding photo. I paid for the cake. Then the hospital photo. I stayed with Olivia for 3 nights when Sophia had Noah. Slept on a plastic chair. Brought her warm socks. I sat there for a long time holding those pieces. I didn't need a card to remind me who I had been. But maybe they did. The house always smelled like cinnamon by the 23rd. It was tradition. Sugar cookies, snickerdoodles, peanut butter with the Hershey's Kiss pressed right in the middle, and then Olivia used to help roll the dough when she was little, her fingers too small to hold the cutter straight. Noah would sneak raw batter when he thought I wasn't looking. Ryan pretended to scold them, but always stole the most once they were baked. Even last year, though they only stayed for coffee. I had the tins ready, labeled, packed, one for each of them. Sophia always said, "Oh, Margaret, you shouldn't have." But she took them all the same. This year, I told myself I wouldn't bother, but my hands reached for the mixing bowls anyway. I worked in silence, sleeves rolled up, radio off. My hands knew the rhythm, even if my heart didn't. Butter creamed with sugar, eggs cracked neatly into the bowl. The sound of the mixer was comforting, mechanical, predictable. Unlike people, the first batch went into the oven. I didn't hum. I didn't smile. I just watched the timer tick down like it owed me something. When the scent started to rise, I paused. It smelled like memory, not joy. When the cookies cooled, I lined them up on the counter, Rows and rows of sweetness, a parade of effort, waiting for mouths that wouldn't arrive. I didn't have the heart to frost them. Instead, I opened the tin I would have filled for Olivia and started to drop them inside one by one. The sound of cookie against metal echoed too loud in the quiet room. No laughter, no footsteps, just me and the ghost of a tradition. I went to the closet and pulled out the holiday tins I'd used for years. Each one had a little name written on masking tape across the bottom. Ryan, no raisins. Sophia, shortbread only. Noah, extra sprinkles. I read each label like a tombstone. Then I peeled them off. The tape came off clean like it had been waiting to let go. I lined the tins on the table, not with cookies, just as they were. Empty, hollow. I stood there a long time, then took a slow breath and did something that surprised me. I opened the back door and stepped outside. The air hit sharp and bright. Snow coated the porch railing in delicate piles. I crossed the yard and walked 2 houses over to the little blue house where Lily lived. Lily was 6. Her mother, Jasmine, had moved in during the spring after leaving a bad marriage. We talked over fences, swapped garden tips. I'd watched Lily chase fireflies in the summer dusk. She'd returned one of my pie dishes last week, carefully washed with a folded note that said, "Thank you for being kind to us." I knocked on their door, still holding the tin. Jasmine opened, eyebrows raised in surprise. "Margaret, hi." "I baked too much," I said simply. "Thought you and Lily might enjoy some." Her face softened. "That's very sweet of you. Lily's just in the back watching those old claymation specials." I smiled and something warm cracked through the cold shell around my chest. "I used to make these for my grandkids," I said simply. Jasmine hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in if you want." I didn't expect that, but I stepped inside. The house smelled like vanilla candles and popcorn, cozy, lived in, a little cluttered. Lily looked up from the couch and waved. "Hi, Miss Margaret." "Hi, sweetheart." She rushed over, already peeking into the tin. "Oh, did you make snickerdoodles again?" "I did," I said, smiling despite myself. "Just for you," she grinned, already reaching for one. Jasmine caught my eye and said softly, "You don't have to be alone. You know." I blinked, then shook my head, just once. "I think I've been alone longer than I realized." She didn't argue. She just nodded, like someone who understood more than she let on. I stayed for 10 minutes, maybe 15, long enough to see Lily's eyes light up, long enough to feel useful again, real. Then I walked home, empty tin in hand, and for the first time all week, I didn't feel invisible. I turned on the tree lights that night for no one. No audience, no children to clap when the room glowed. No Ryan making a joke about energy bills. No Sophia adjusting ornaments so they'd look more balanced. Just me standing barefoot on the living room rug, watching colored lights blink in slow, steady rhythm. The tree was smaller than the ones we used to have, easier to carry, easier to set up. I dragged it in myself the week after Thanksgiving. Still full of hope then, still believing they'd come. I hadn't decorated it. I had saved that for Olivia and Noah like always. Olivia liked the delicate glass balls I let her hang higher, where her brother couldn't reach. Noah preferred the garish ones, candy canes and felt Santa with googly eyes. But now it was Christmas Eve, and the branches were still bare. The only thing on the tree was light, and I think that's what made it beautiful. It didn't pretend to be full. I sat on the sofa across from it and stared, the glow softening the sharp edges of the room. I could see the reflection of the lights in the window. 2 trees now, one inside, one ghosting the glass. Thomas used to say a tree should tell a story. Ours always did. Not a perfect one. We didn't color coordinate or buy new ornaments every year. We used what we had: popsicle stick stars, paper angels yellowed with time, a crocheted snowflake I never quite finished. He'd lift Ryan up when he was small to place the topper. Later, Ryan would lift Olivia. It was always a family moment, a ritual. I didn't know then it was something you could lose. I looked at the box of ornaments still sitting unopened by the fireplace. I thought briefly of pulling them out, of finishing what we always started. But it didn't feel right anymore. Not because I was angry, because it would have been pretending this was still a house waiting for someone, pretending they might walk through the door, cheeks flushed, arms full of gifts, saying, "Sorry we're late, Mom." They weren't coming, and this tree didn't need anything else. It wasn't empty. It was honest. I poured a small glass of brandy, the bottle I kept in the back of the pantry for special occasions, though I hadn't opened it since Thomas passed, and toasted the tree. "To quiet truths," I whispered. The glass clinked against itself. Then I stood and walked to the mantel. There, among old photos and knickknacks, was the framed picture of Thomas and me on our last Christmas together. He wore that ugly green sweater Olivia had picked out. I wore a Santa brooch he always said made me look dangerously festive. We looked tired, but we were smiling. "If you were here," I said quietly, "I wouldn't have to explain why this hurts." He always saw things before I did. He was the first to notice Ryan pulling away, to hear the silence beneath Sophia's politeness, to catch the flickers of disinterest in Olivia's eyes. "Don't chase them," he once told me. "Let them come to you." But I did chase. I kept calling, giving, forgiving. I thought that's what mothers do. Maybe it is. But there comes a day when you look at a bare tree and realize it's still standing, even without the ornaments, even without the noise. I turned off the overhead lights and sat down again. The tree glowed quietly, and for the first time this season, so did I. I'll continue with part 2 of The Forgotten Gift, according to your outline, maintaining the same engaging storytelling techniques. It was almost dusk on Christmas Eve when I heard the knock. Not loud, hesitant, like whoever it was hadn't made up their mind about being there. I wasn't expecting anyone, certainly not family. I paused in the hallway, uncertain. A small part of me hoped, absurdly, that it was Ryan, that he'd come with some apology, some warm excuse, a peace offering of words too late but still welcome. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Ryan. It was Lily, the neighbor's daughter, 6 years old, bundled in a purple puffer jacket with one mitten missing. She was holding a pie dish in both hands, wobbling slightly under its weight. "Hi, Miss Margaret," she said. "Mom said to bring this back." I blinked. The dish I'd sent over with cookies days ago. I'd forgotten all about it. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said, reaching for it. "Did you have a nice Christmas Eve?" She nodded. "We made lasagna and watched a movie where a dog saves Santa. I liked it. There were a lot of snow explosions." I smiled, picturing it. "Sounds exciting?" She hesitated, glancing behind her toward the street where Jasmine's car idled. The headlights glowed through the light snowfall. Then Lily looked back at me, her voice smaller now. "Mom said I could ask if you wanted to come over for cocoa." I felt something catch in my throat. Cocoa, not an invitation wrapped in pity. Just cocoa, simple, warm, a door not closing. I looked past her to Jasmine, who lifted a hand in a gentle wave, her expression open but not pushing, just an offer, just grace. "I think I'll stay in tonight," I said softly, touching Lily's arm. "But thank you, love. That means a lot." Lily nodded solemnly. "Okay. Mom says you're the best baker on the street." I chuckled. "She hasn't tried my lemon squares yet." Maybe next time, she asked, already stepping backward. Maybe next time. I watched her skip down the walkway, the empty pie dish still warm in my hands. When I stepped back inside, the quiet greeted me again, but it felt different this time, less like loneliness, more like a pause, a deep breath. I carried the dish into the kitchen and set it on the counter. Then, without really planning to, I opened the pantry and pulled down the good cocoa, the kind I saved for guests who didn't come. I poured milk into a pan and let it warm, added cinnamon, a touch of vanilla. While it simmered, I reached for one of the tins I hadn't filled. This one hadn't been labeled. It didn't need a name. I placed a few cookies inside and snapped the lid shut. I'm beyond. Back in the living room, I settled into my chair by the window with the cocoa and a cookie. Outside, lights twinkled on porches. Cars crawled through the snow with muffled music leaking from their windows. Everyone was going somewhere. And me, I wasn't. Not this year. But I wasn't waiting anymore either. The knock at the door hadn't been the one I expected. But maybe it was the one I needed. Christmas morning came quietly. No rush of footsteps. No sleepy children dragging pillows into the living room. No rustle of wrapping paper or coffee brewing for guests. Just the slow creak of old floorboards and the soft hum of the radiator. I sat in my kitchen robe, hands wrapped around a second cup of tea, staring at the pine tree in the corner. Still undecorated, still beautiful in its own quiet way. I'd never had a Christmas like this, never spent one alone, not really. But I didn't feel empty. I felt clear. After breakfast, I walked to the side drawer in the hallway, the one Thomas used to call my command center. Bills, documents, receipts, all carefully filed in manila folders. I pulled out the one labeled Family Finances. There it was. Every check I'd written over the years, the mortgage down payment, the private school fees, the new SUV Sophia insisted was safer for snowy roads, grocery loans that were never paid back, short-term emergencies that turned into long-term patterns. Ryan had power of attorney over one of my smaller accounts, just in case. I told myself, in case of an emergency, in case something happened to me. Turns out something had. I dialed the bank. A cheerful young man answered, "Good morning and Merry Christmas. This is Evan from First Horizon Bank. How can I help you today?" "Merry Christmas. Evan, my name is Margaret Williams. I'd like to make some changes to my accounts." "Of course, Mrs. Williams. I'll just need to verify your identity first." We went through the motions, address, birth date, last four of my social. Once verified, I didn't hesitate. I want to cancel all automatic payments and scheduled transfers associated with my son Ryan Adams, or any accounts bearing his name or access. There was a pause on the line. I imagined Evan blinking at his screen. "Understood, Mrs. Williams. I do see some active links. Would you like me to deactivate the power of attorney as well?" "Yes," I said. "Effective immediately." Another pause, then typing. "It's done. You'll need to come in after the holiday to sign the final revocation paperwork, but the access has been temporarily suspended." "Thank you. Is there anything else I can assist you with?" I looked at the untouched gifts stacked neatly in the bin by the coat closet. "Yes," I said. "I'd like to open a new trust account under the name of Lily Reeves. She's 6, lives 2 houses down." Another pause. "A child?" Evan asked, cautious. "A friend," I said. "Someone who remembers to knock." He didn't ask more, just typed. When I hung up, my hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, from relief. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Done explaining myself. Done reaching into my pockets like love depended on it. Done offering parts of myself that no one wanted, only used. That afternoon, I wrapped one of the cookie tins in brown paper, tied it with twine, and wrote on the top, "For Lily, Merry Christmas from your neighbor." I walked it over quietly, left it on their porch, and stepped away before the door could open. Back home, I stood at the window and watched the street. Ryan wasn't coming. No one from that house was. And for the first time, I didn't hope otherwise, because no isn't just the absence of a yes. It's a decision. It's a boundary. It's the beginning of something new. The gifts stayed in the bin by the coat closet, untouched. I didn't plan to move them again. I liked them where they were, neatly stacked and sealed, not as offerings, but as reminders of who I'd been, of what I'd stopped being. I opened my notebook, the plain one I kept for grocery lists and reminders, and tore out a blank page. Then, slowly, I began to write. Not a letter, not even a list, just names. Names of people who had shown up, not out of obligation, but out of kindness. Jasmine, Lily, my old friend Denise from church, who still called every month without fail, my late neighbor Harold's daughter, who always asked if I needed help shoveling after snow. These were the ones I'd overlooked, lost in my focus on a family that only saw me when it was convenient. I closed the notebook, folded the paper once, and placed it in the cookie tin that was meant for Ryan. I'd used that list as my new address book. It was time to reassign my heart. Later that evening, I pulled out my best sweater, navy wool, hand-knit years ago. Thomas always said it brought out my eyes. I wore it now, not for anyone else, but because it felt like armor. Then I lit a candle in the window, not for them to find their way home, but to remind myself I was still here, still warm, still standing. I spent the rest of the night writing cards, not the kind you buy in bulk with scripted messages, but blank ones, simple cream with thick envelopes. I wrote 3, one to Lily. Thank you for being brave enough to knock. You reminded me that kindness has no age. One to Jasmine. Your warmth reached further than you know. You made space for someone most people overlook. One to myself. That one took the longest. Margaret, you forgot for a while who you were, but you remembered just in time. You are not less because they don't see you. You are not invisible because they look away. You are whole and strong and worthy of more than quiet dismissal. Keep going. I sealed it, placed it on my bedside table, and went to sleep with something I hadn't felt in a long time: resolve. I woke up on December 26th to a quiet morning and a blue sky. The snow had crusted overnight, thin ice sparkling across every surface. It looked like the kind of morning that begged for purpose. Not routine, not waiting, something real. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't check for messages. Instead, I reached for the list I'd made, the names, the people who'd shown up in small, quiet ways, who'd seen me not as a task or a seasonal duty, but as a person. It was time to return the kindness. I filled 3 tins with the remaining cookies, popped ribbons on top. No names this time, just small notes that read, "Thank you for being good." Then I did something even bolder. I took the rest of the wrapped gifts, the ones with Ryan's name, with Sophia's, with Olivia's and Noah's, and I peeled off each tag slowly, deliberately. They came off easily like they'd never belonged. I rewrapped only one, the sketch set for Olivia, because that could still bring joy to someone else. That afternoon, I drove across town to the shelter I sometimes donated to. I'd never been inside, only dropped off items in bins, left checks, stayed in the background. But today, I parked and walked in. The warmth of the place hit me instantly. Smells of soup, of laundry detergent, of too many coats and not enough space. It felt human. The woman at the desk looked up. "Can I help you?" I nodded. "I brought some things. Gifts, if that's all right." She stood. "It's more than all right. Come in." I followed her into a narrow room where children played with worn toys and a man strummed a guitar softly in the corner. People looked up. Some smiled. Some didn't. I placed the gifts on a side table. One girl, maybe 9 or 10, hovered near, eyes wide. I handed her the tin with the smiley face sticker. She clutched it like it might disappear. "Thank you," she said, quiet but clear. And that was enough. I didn't stay long, just enough to look around and understand something I should have known years ago. Family doesn't always live in your house. Sometimes it lives in the way someone holds a cookie like treasure, in a stranger's open door, in the knock of a child carrying back a pie dish. I drove home lighter, not because I'd given away so much, but because I'd finally stopped giving to people who didn't care that I did. That night, I stood by my window, watching the wind lift snow off the trees like glitter. My tree still glowed quietly, bare as ever, but it didn't feel lacking. It felt honest. The phone stayed silent, but the silence no longer felt like punishment. It felt like peace. Ryan was the first to notice. It happened on the morning of the 27th when he logged into the family account to check the automatic payments. He always waited until after the holidays. Smarter to let the gifts go through, the utilities post, the mortgage debit quietly roll out. Except this time, nothing had rolled, no transfers, no deposits, no scheduled payments, just silence. At first, he thought it was a glitch, maybe a delay from the holidays, maybe a technical issue. But then he tried to access the secondary account, the one I had linked to help him manage cash flow during tight months, and found the access denied. His name had been removed, the authority revoked. He called the bank. His voice clipped, impatient. The clerk confirmed it. The account holder had made official changes. Access restrictions were now in place. A revocation form was pending signature. "Who?" Ryan asked, though he already knew Mrs. Margaret Williams. The voice on the other end said. His mouth went dry. At first, it didn't feel real. He sat in the home office, blinking at the screen, half expecting it to refresh with different information. Then he picked up his phone and called me. I didn't answer, so he texted, "Hey, Mom? I think there's been some sort of banking error. Can you call me when you get a chance?" An hour passed, then another. No reply. He started pacing the kitchen. Sophia stood by the sink, pouring herself coffee, watching him without saying anything. Finally, he snapped. "Did you notice anything weird on Christmas?" Sophia raised an eyebrow. Besides the fact that she didn't send the usual gifts. He turned to her. "Exactly. Nothing. Not a card, not cookies, not a single thing." Sophia shrugged. "Maybe she's finally pulling back. I mean, you did say we wanted space." He stared at her. She kept stirring her coffee. "And what about the fact that she didn't call once?" he asked, voice rising. "Didn't even text the kids." Sophia exhaled slowly. "Ryan, you told her we were keeping it small. Immediate family." "She is immediate family," he snapped. Sophia didn't reply. At that moment, Olivia walked into the kitchen. "Mom, Dad," she asked, "did Grandma send presents this year?" They both looked at her. "No," Ryan said. "Not this time." Olivia hesitated. "I thought she always did." Sophia gave her daughter a tight smile. "People change, sweetheart. Maybe she's tired." Noah appeared in the doorway. "But she sent cookies last year. Did she get sick or something?" Ryan opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came, because the truth was, he didn't know. He hadn't called on Christmas, hadn't even checked in. And now, for the first time, something dawned on him. She hadn't forgotten them. She had chosen not to be there. He left the room, phone in hand, and dialed again. Still no answer. He opened the front closet expecting to find the stack of gifts she usually delivered, left by the door if she thought they were out, but there was nothing. He went out to the porch, checked the mailbox, peeked behind the potted plant where she sometimes left a tin of cookies with a little note tucked inside. Nothing, no note, no cookies, no Margaret. Later that day, he called the bank again, asked if anything else had been changed. The clerk was polite, but firm. His access was gone, and a new trust account had been opened under someone else's name, a child's. Not Olivia, not Noah, someone he didn't know. That evening, he sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet while Sophia brushed her hair in the mirror. "She's really done with us," he said quietly. Sophia stopped brushing. "She cut us off." Still, she said nothing. And that, Ryan realized, was as close to a confession as he would get. The phone rang just after noon. I saw his name light up on the screen. Ryan, my son, my boy who used to sleep with one foot out of the covers, who once cried because he thought he'd heard a ladybug. The same boy who now only remembered me when something stopped working. I didn't answer. The ringing echoed through the room like a challenge. I sat in my chair by the window, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, watching flakes of snow drift across the road. It rang again and again, then stopped. Then came the text. "Mom, please call me. I think there's been some confusion. I just want to talk." I set the phone face down on the table. It buzzed twice more before falling silent. He didn't want to talk. He wanted to undo the silence, undo the stillness, undo the decision that finally said, "No more." I understood his confusion. For so long, I had been reliable, not in the good sense, but in the taken for granted one. A pantry always stocked, a checkbook always open, a calendar always clear. But now I'd changed the terms, and people don't like it when furniture starts speaking. He called again in the evening. This time he left a voicemail. His voice was tight, measured, too polite, the tone people use when they're trying not to sound guilty. "Hi, Mom. Just wanted to hear your voice. The kids were wondering why they didn't hear from you on Christmas. I told them you probably got busy, or maybe your phone was off. Anyway, give me a call when you get a minute. We missed you." He hung up without saying, "Love you." I didn't miss that part. I sat in the dim light of the living room, staring at the glowing tree, now slightly wilting, but still holding itself with quiet dignity. The unopened gifts were still packed in the bin. I could have called him back, told him everything, that I felt erased, that his just immediate family cut like glass, that I baked cookies with my hands shaking, wondering who I was to them anymore. But I didn't owe him that. He knew. He knew the way people do when they've made a habit of ignoring pain signals. Sophia hadn't called at all. Olivia hadn't texted. Noah, bless him, had drawn me a picture last year, a little crayon snowman with Grandma written in crooked letters. I'd saved it, but children grow the way trees do. They bend toward the light they're given, and I hadn't been their light in a long time. I was their habit, and now that habit was broken. Another voicemail came later that night. This time Ryan sounded different, not polished, just tired. "Mom," he said with a long breath. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but I hope you're okay. I know I messed up. I should have done more, called more. I just figured," he paused. "I just thought you'd always be there." The message ended there, abrupt, like he didn't know how to finish the sentence. Maybe he didn't. I held the phone for a while, thumb hovering over the screen, and then I turned it off, set it aside, let the silence return. It didn't feel like punishment. It felt like protection. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to be noticed. I was noticing myself. New Year's Eve came in quietly. No parties, no toasts, no countdowns. Just the ticking of the kitchen clock and the soft exhale of wind pressing against the window panes. The kind of night that asked for nothing but honesty. I sat at my table with a single lit candle, a small slice of leftover cake, and my cup of tea. No champagne, no resolutions, just stillness and presence. Outside, the world rushed toward midnight. Noise, fireworks, glass clinking against glass. Inside, time moved slower. And for once, I wasn't trying to catch up. I wasn't bracing for another season of being forgotten. I was exactly where I chose to be. I thought about what I used to give every year. Boxes filled with sugar, sweaters, books, toys, time, effort, money, energy, hope. I wrapped it all up in ribbons and sent it out like a message in a bottle. Please remember me. Please make room. And this year, I gave it all to myself instead. I gave myself permission to stop chasing people who let go of my hand first, to stop explaining my value, to stop mistaking tolerance for love. I gave myself space. I gave myself silence. I gave myself peace. And then I gave away what remained to those who showed up without being asked, who opened their doors without performance, who accepted a tin of cookies as more than a favor. Lily drew me a picture yesterday. It's on my fridge now. A crooked house with yellow windows and Miss Margaret written in rainbow crayon across the top. Underneath it, she wrote, "You make things feel nice." I stared at those words for a long time. Not "you bake well," not "thank you for gifts," not "you help us." You make things feel nice. Isn't that what love is supposed to be? Ryan never called again after the 27th. Not on New Year's, not after. And I didn't call him. Maybe he will one day. Maybe he won't. But I'm not sitting in that silence anymore wondering what I did wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I gave and gave and gave until I realized I didn't have to keep proving I was worth being chosen because I was never the one who left. I was the one carrying the gifts up the stairs, unopened. Now they stay where they belong, packed away, quiet, no longer begging to be loved. And me, I walk lighter. I smile more. I rest in the dignity I reclaimed. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about return, not of people, of self. I'll now complete your story with part 3 of The Forgotten Gift, continuing with the same engaging style and narrative techniques. January arrived with a fresh blanket of snow and a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. The Christmas decorations still adorned the houses on my street, but mine had been packed away, all except the tree. I'd kept it, bare and honest, until its needles began to drop. A quiet reminder that even the most beautiful things have their season. On the third day of the new year, I heard a car pull into my driveway. My heart quickened for a moment, old habits dying hard. Through the frosted window, I glimpsed Ryan's SUV, the one I'd helped finance 3 years ago. I stood very still, watching as he sat there, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel. 5 minutes passed. 10. He didn't get out. Eventually, he backed away and drove off. I wasn't sure what he'd been hoping for, perhaps that I'd rush out, eager to reconcile, to return to the old pattern. But I remained where I was, a cup of tea growing cold in my hands, watching the empty space where his car had been. It wasn't that I didn't love him. Love wasn't the question. It never had been. The question was value. What we value, we make room for. The phone rang later that afternoon. Not Ryan this time, but Sophia. In all our years of knowing each other, she'd rarely called me directly. I stared at her name on the screen. Curious despite myself, after 4 rings, I answered, "Hello, Sophia." There was a pause, as if she hadn't expected me to pick up. Margaret, her voice was formal, controlled. I hope you're well. I am, thank you. Another pause. I could hear her breath, the slight rustle of fabric, the sound of a door closing wherever she was. We were concerned when we didn't hear from you over the holidays, she said finally. I didn't respond immediately. I let the words sit between us, both of us aware of their inaccuracy. Were you? I asked simply. She cleared her throat. Of course, the children missed you. I missed them too. I could have said more. I could have pointed out that she'd had weeks to call, to check, to remember I existed, but the time for explanations had passed. Ryan mentioned there was some confusion with the bank. There it was, the real purpose of the call. No confusion, I said. I made some changes. My accounts are mine to manage. Of course they are. Her tone was placating, the way one might speak to a child or a confused elder. But Ryan has always helped with the finances. He's just worried about you. Is he? Another silence. Margaret, we're family. I almost laughed at that. Yes, Sophia, that's what I thought too. What does that mean? A hint of defensiveness crept into her voice. It means exactly what you think it does. Family makes room at the table. I heard her inhale sharply. If this is about Christmas, Ryan explained we wanted to keep things small this year. Yes, he did. So you understand. I closed my eyes, feeling suddenly tired. I understand perfectly. And now you need to understand something. I'm no longer financing your lifestyle, not because I'm angry, but because I've finally recognized my value in your lives. If I'm not family enough to be included, I'm certainly not family enough to be used. Used. Her voice rose. That's unfair. Ryan has done so much for you. Yea, this time I did laugh. A small, soft sound without humor. Has he, or have I done for him? Sophia. Think carefully before you answer. She didn't respond. I wish you all well, I said. Truly, but I'm done being convenient. I'm done being forgotten until needed. I've made my peace with it. The children shouldn't suffer because of adult disagreements, she said finally, her voice tight. No, they shouldn't. They're welcome here anytime. You know where I live. The door is open to those who want to walk through it. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, watching the winter light fade outside my window. I'd expected to feel shaky, uncertain, but instead I felt calm, clear. The conversation had confirmed what I already knew. I wasn't missed. I was needed. There's a world of difference between the two. That evening, Jasmine called to invite me for dinner the following weekend. Nothing fancy, she said. Just spaghetti and garlic bread. Lily insists you come. She wants to show you her new drawings. I accepted without hesitation. A real invitation, an honest one. The next morning, I woke early and did something I'd been contemplating for weeks. I called Denise from church and asked if she'd like to join me for the senior art class at the community center. I've been meaning to try it for years, I told her. I think it's time. About time, she laughed. I've been asking you to come with me since Thomas passed. It was true, she had, but I'd always declined, saying I needed to be available for Ryan or the grandkids, in case they called, in case they needed me. Now, I was available for myself. The art class was on Thursdays. I marked it in my calendar with a bright red pen. No pencil, no tentative plans. This was for me, and it wasn't going to be erased. The strangest part of all this wasn't the changes I was making. It was how natural they felt, like slipping into a pair of comfortable shoes I'd forgotten I owned. A week passed, then another. The phone rang occasionally, mostly Ryan. Once Olivia, but I let it go to voicemail. Not out of spite, but because I wasn't ready. When I did listen to the messages, they all had the same tone: confusion, concern, the subtle implication that I was being unreasonable, that I was punishing them, that I would come around eventually. None of them acknowledged what had actually happened. None of them apologized. I found myself thinking of Thomas more and more. What would he make of all this? He'd been firmer than me, less willing to overlook slights, to make excuses. "You give too much," he'd told me once. "You leave nothing for yourself." He'd been right, of course, but it had taken me 17 years to see it. On a cold Tuesday in late January, I was returning from the grocery store when I saw Ryan's car parked in front of my house again. This time, he was standing on the porch, hands in his pockets, stamping his feet against the cold. I pulled into the driveway, my heart suddenly racing. I hadn't prepared for this moment, hadn't rehearsed what to say. He turned as I got out of the car, his expression a mix of relief and apprehension. "Mom," he said, moving toward me. "Let me help with those." He reached for the grocery bags, and I let him take them. His hands were bare despite the cold, those same hands that had once been so small they could barely wrap around my thumb. We walked to the door in silence. I unlocked it, and he followed me inside, carrying the bags to the kitchen like he'd done 1,000 times before. "You've been ignoring my calls," he said as I unpacked the groceries. "Yes," I admitted. "Why?" I looked at him then, really looked. The lines around his eyes, the stubble on his chin, the way his shoulders hunched slightly forward. He looked tired, older. "Why do you think, Ryan?" He ran a hand through his hair. "If this is about Christmas, I told you." "It's not about Christmas," I interrupted gently. "It's about everything before it and everything since. It's about how I've become an afterthought in your life, only remembered when you need something." "That's not fair," he protested. "Isn't it? When was the last time you called me just to talk, not to ask for money, not to see if I could watch the kids, just to see how I was doing?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "You can't remember, can you?" I said, not unkindly. "I've been busy," he said defensively. "Work's been crazy. The kids have activities." "I know," I said. "Everyone's busy. That's life, but we make time for what matters." "Ryan, that's the point. I wasn't important enough to make time for—" His face flushed. "So you cut me off. Take away access to the accounts. That's your solution." I continued putting away groceries, my movements deliberate and calm. "I didn't cut you off. I reclaimed what was mine." "There's a difference. Mom, we depend on that money, the mortgage, the kids' school fees." I turned to face him fully. "And that's exactly the problem, isn't it? You've come to depend on me financially, but not emotionally. I'm good enough to pay your bills, but not good enough to sit at your Christmas table." The words hung between us, heavy with truth. "I didn't mean it like that," he said finally, his voice lower. "About Christmas. It was Sophia's idea. Her parents were coming, and you know how they can be. They criticize everything, and we just wanted a peaceful day." I nodded slowly. "I understand. Truly, I do. But you could have told me that. Instead, you said immediate family only, as if I wasn't immediate family." He looked down. "I didn't think, no." I agreed. "You didn't." There was a long silence. I finished with the groceries and put the kettle on. "Old habits." "Tea," I offered. He nodded, sitting heavily at the kitchen table. I could feel his eyes on me as I moved around the kitchen, pulling out cups, tea bags, the sugar bowl he'd always used too much from. "I don't understand what you want from me," he said finally. I turned to look at him, this boy-turned-man who had somehow forgotten who I was, who we were to each other. I don't want anything from you, Ryan. That's the whole point. I'm done wanting. I'm done hoping. I'm done expecting. I'm just living my life now on my own terms. So that's it. You're just done with us. I set the tea in front of him, noticing how he automatically reached for the sugar. 3 spoonfuls like always. I'm not done with you. I'll never be done with you. You're my son. But I'm done with the version of myself that accepts scraps of attention as if they're feasts. He stirred his tea, eyes downcast. The kids miss you? I miss them too. They're welcome here anytime. And Sophia? I sipped my tea, considering. Sophia has never particularly enjoyed my company. Ryan, we both know that. He didn't deny it. Another small truth acknowledged. What about the accounts, he asked, his voice careful. I set my cup down. Those remain as they are. Your father and I worked hard for that money. It was meant to see me through my later years, not to supplement your lifestyle. You're a grown man with a good job. You don't need my money. The house is yours. I finished for him. I gave you that money freely. I don't regret it. But no more, Ryan. The well is dry. He looked as if he might argue, then seemed to think better of it. We sat in silence for a while, drinking tea in the kitchen where I'd once bandaged his skinned knees, helped with science projects, taught him to bake his father's favorite cookies. I don't know how to fix this, he said finally. I reached across the table and touched his hand, briefly, the first physical contact between us in months. You don't have to fix anything. Just understand, I matter. Ryan, my time matters. My feelings matter. And for too long, they haven't mattered to you or to Sophia. He nodded slowly, not in agreement necessarily, but in acknowledgement. Can I bring the kids over this weekend? He asked. They've been asking about you. I'd like that, I said. But I have plans on Saturday. The art class I joined. Sunday would work. Something flickered across his face. Surprise. Maybe that I had plans that couldn't be rearranged for them. Sunday then, he agreed, after he left. I stood at the window watching his car pull away. The conversation hadn't resolved everything. It wasn't meant to, but a truth had been spoken, heard, if not fully accepted. It was a beginning of sorts, not of reconciliation, necessarily, but of something more important, recognition. Sunday arrived with gentle snowfall and a sky the color of pearl. I woke early, made cinnamon rolls Noah's favorite, and set the table with the good dishes, the ones with the blue flowers around the edges. Not because I was trying to impress, but because some occasions deserve a touch of ceremony. They arrived at 11, the sound of car doors slamming, children's voices rising in excitement. I opened the door before they could knock. And there they were. Olivia, taller than I remembered, her dark hair in 2 neat braids. Noah, his cheeks flushed with cold, a small package clutched in his mittened hands. Grandma, he cried, launching himself at me with all the unrestrained enthusiasm of a 7-year-old. I caught him, breathed in the scent of winter air and the faint trace of the coconut shampoo Sophia always bought. Olivia approached more cautiously, the self-consciousness of 11 beginning to assert itself, but she leaned into my hug, holding on a moment longer than usual. We missed you, she whispered. I missed you too, sweetheart. Ryan stood a few steps back, watching the reunion with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sophia wasn't with them. I hadn't expected her to be. Come in, I urged, ushering them out of the cold. I've made cinnamon rolls. Noah's eyes lit up. The gooey kind. Is there any other kind worth making? I teased. Inside, they shed coats and boots, exclaiming over the warmth, the smell of cinnamon and sugar. I noticed Olivia looking around, perhaps noting the absence of Christmas decorations, the bare spots where familiar objects had stood. I'd been rearranging, making the house more to my liking than to anyone else's. I got you something, Noah announced, thrusting his package toward me. It was wrapped in Sunday comics, secured with too much tape. Clearly his own work. Thank you, sweetheart, I said, carefully unwrapping it at the kitchen table while they watched. Inside was a small clay figure, crudely shaped but recognizable as a woman with gray hair. It's you, he explained unnecessarily. I made it in art class. I held it carefully, this misshapen treasure, feeling something catch in my throat. It's beautiful, I told him. The best gift I've ever received. He beamed. I have something for you too, Olivia said, more hesitantly. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. It's not much. It was a drawing, done in pencil with careful attention to detail. A portrait of me, sitting in my favorite chair by the window, reading. She'd captured something in the expression, a peacefulness I hadn't known was visible to others. Olivia, I breathed. This is extraordinary. When did you do this? She shrugged, pleased but trying not to show it. Last week, from memory. Dad said we were coming to see you, and I wanted to bring something. I looked at Ryan, who stood leaning against the door frame, watching us. Something passed between us. An acknowledgement. The morning unfolded gently. We ate cinnamon rolls at the kitchen table, Noah getting frosting on his chin, Olivia telling me about her new art teacher at school, Ryan mostly quiet, listening. After breakfast, Noah wanted to build a snowman in the backyard, and Olivia joined him while Ryan and I washed dishes side by side, an old rhythm we fell into without discussion. Thank you for this, he said quietly as we worked, for seeing them. They're my grandchildren. Ryan, I'll always want to see them. He nodded, hands deep in soapy water. Sophia and I have been talking about everything. I waited, not prompting, not pushing. She's not good at admitting when she's wrong, he continued. Neither am I guess. But we know we handled things badly, not just Christmas, everything. I dried a plate, setting it carefully in the cabinet. I appreciate that. We've been looking at our finances, he went on. Without your help, it's been a wake-up call, honestly. We've been living beyond our means for a long time. I nodded, unsurprised. Most people do. We're scaling back. Sophia's going back to work part-time. We've put the kids in public school for next year. I raised my eyebrows at that. Sophia had been adamant about private education. It was her idea, actually, Ryan said, noting my surprise. She says it's more important that they learn the value of money than have the fanciest education. That's unexpected, I admitted. He smiled slightly. She's not all bad, Mom. She's just complicated. Her own parents were never very present. They gave money, not time. I think she learned that pattern without realizing it. I considered this glimpse into Sophia that I'd never been offered before. We all carry patterns from our childhood, I said finally. We finished the dishes in companionable silence. Through the window, I could see the children rolling enormous balls of snow, laughing as they worked. I want to make this right, Ryan said suddenly, turning to face me. I don't know how, exactly, but I want to try. I dried my hands slowly, considering my words. It's not about making it right, Ryan. It's about making it different. I'm different now. I've discovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. I've made new friends, found new interests. I'm not the same woman who was waiting by the phone on Christmas Eve. He looked down. I know. I can see that. That doesn't mean there's no place for you or the children in my life. It just means the place has changed. I won't be your safety net anymore. I won't be your convenient babysitter or your emergency fund, but I will be your mother. Always. He nodded, blinking rapidly. Fair enough. We joined the children outside, helping them finish their snowman, finding sticks for arms, stones for buttons. I contributed an old scarf, Ryan his own hat. The result was lopsided but charming, grinning crookedly at us from the center of the yard. As they prepared to leave, Noah hugged me fiercely, making me promise to display his clay figure somewhere special. Olivia asked if she could come back soon, maybe join me for one of my art classes. I'd love that, I told her, meaning it. Ryan hesitated at the door. Next weekend? He asked. Maybe dinner here, all of us. The question in his voice was clear. Sophia, too, I considered it, this olive branch. Sunday, I agreed. 6 o'clock. Tell Sophia she doesn't need to bring anything. After they left, I stood in the quiet house, feeling the echo of their presence. The clay figure sat on my mantel now, a small, misshapen testament to love that persists despite change. Beside it, I placed Olivia's drawing, carefully framed in an old frame I'd found in the attic. New gifts, honest ones. That evening, a text came from Ryan. A photo of the children, back home, still flushed from the cold. Smiling, beneath it, a simple message. Thank you for everything. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I sat with the feeling, this tentative new beginning. Not a return to what was, but a step toward what could be. Later, as I prepared for bed, I remembered Lily's picture on my refrigerator. You make things feel nice. Such a simple truth, yet so profound. Maybe that's all any of us can hope for in this life. Not grand gestures, not perfect understanding, just the ability to make things feel nice for those around us. And the wisdom to recognize when others do the same for us. The next morning, I woke to find another text from Ryan, sent late in the night. I'm sorry, Mom, not just for Christmas, for everything before it. I took you for granted. I won't do that again. I held the phone for a long moment, feeling the weight of those words, their simple truth. I know. I texted back. I love you. Always have, always will. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. It was acknowledgement of hurt, of change, of possibility. Later that day, as I walked to my art class, snow crunching beneath my boots, I saw Lily playing in her front yard. She waved wildly when she spotted me, running to the fence. Miss Margaret, where are you going? Can I come? I laughed. Not today, sweetheart. It's my art class, but maybe another time. Promise, she asked, eyes serious. Promise. I agreed, reaching across the fence to tap her nose gently. Some things are too important to miss. She nodded, satisfied, then ran back to her snow castle, calling goodbye over her shoulder. As I continued my walk, I thought about promises, the ones we keep, the ones we break, the ones we make to ourselves in the quiet of our own hearts. I had made myself a promise after Christmas, to value myself as much as I valued others, to recognize my worth even when others didn't. It wasn't an easy promise to keep. Old habits die hard, and mine had been cultivated over decades. But each day, I practiced. Each time I said no when I meant no. Each time I said yes to something just for me. I grew stronger in my resolve. Ryan's apology hadn't changed that. If anything, it had reinforced the rightness of my path. His recognition had come not despite my boundary, but because of it, in standing firm. I had made myself visible in a way I'd never been before. The snow began to fall again as I reached the community center, large flakes drifting lazily from the pearl gray sky. I paused for a moment, looking up, feeling the cold touch of snowflakes on my cheeks, my eyelashes. In that moment, I was profoundly present, not thinking of the past, not worrying about the future, just here, now, alive in this body, this moment, this life that was mine alone. I smiled and continued into the building, where Denise waited, where canvases stood ready, where a new chapter was being written. Stroke by careful stroke, spring came early that year, pushing through the last remnants of snow with determined green shoots and brave crocuses. I spent more time in the garden than I had in years, clearing away dead leaves, turning soil, planning what to plant. My relationship with Ryan had settled into something new, not what it had been, but not broken either. We spoke weekly, sometimes more. The children visited regularly. Even Sophia had begun to thaw, bringing a homemade casserole one Sunday dinner, asking about my art class with what seemed like genuine interest. I remained firm about the financial boundaries. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of tension, of implied expectation, but I held my ground, and gradually they adjusted. They had to. Life has a way of filling the spaces we create. The most surprising development wasn't the changes in my family, but the changes in myself. I joined a book club at the library, made new friends at my art class, started volunteering at the community garden once a week. My calendar, once empty save for family obligations, now filled with activities of my own choosing. One warm April morning, I received an unexpected call from Jasmine. "Margaret," she said, her voice bright with excitement, "I have news. I've been offered a job in the city. A good one, with benefits, the works." "That's wonderful," I exclaimed, genuinely pleased for her. She'd been working part-time at the local pharmacy, making do but not thriving. "The thing is," she continued, "it means moving. The commute would be impossible from here." I felt a pang at that. In the months since Christmas, Jasmine and Lily had become fixtures in my life. Weekly dinners, impromptu visits, borrowed cups of sugar that turned into hour-long conversations. "We'll miss you," I said, meaning it. "That's actually why I'm calling," she said. "I was wondering, would you consider coming with us, not to live together?" She added quickly. "But there's a small apartment building near where we'll be moving. The rent is reasonable, and it's a nice area. Lily would still be close by." I sat with the question, surprised by how it resonated. "You want me to move to the city?" "Only if you want to," she assured me. "I just thought, you've become important to us. Margaret, to Lily especially, and I know how much she matters to you." It was true. The little girl had carved out a place in my heart with her crooked drawings and enthusiastic knocks on my door. "I'll think about it," I promised, after we hung up. I walked through my house, really seeing it. This place had been home for 42 years. Thomas and I had bought it when Ryan was just 3. Every corner held memories. Every scratch on the hardwood, every chip in the paint told a story. But lately, I'd begun to feel that those stories were complete. The chapters written, the book closed. Perhaps it was time for a new volume. I called Ryan that evening and told him about Jasmine's offer. "You're thinking of moving?" he asked, surprise evident in his voice. "I'm considering it," I said carefully. "It would be a big change." There was a pause. "What about us? The kids, you'd be an hour away." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "An hour isn't so far, and you have a car. But your house, Mom, all your memories with Dad. The memories come with me. Ryan, they're not in the walls or the floors. They're here." I tapped my chest, again a gesture he couldn't see, but might feel across the distance. Another pause, longer this time. "You've really changed, haven't you?" It wasn't accusatory, just an observation. "Yes," I agreed. "I have." Because of what happened at Christmas, I considered this. Not because of it, but it was a catalyst. I suppose. It made me see things clearly for the first time in a long while. I'm still sorry about that, he said quietly. I know, and I've forgiven you, but I won't forget what it taught me. After we hung up, I sat on my porch swing, watching the evening settle over the neighborhood. The air was soft with spring, fragrant with new growth and possibility. Change was always frightening. It was easier to stay put, to cling to the familiar, even when the familiar had become a cage of sorts. But I'd already changed in ways I never thought possible. What was one more leap the next day? I called a realtor. Then I called Jasmine. I'd like to see that apartment, I said. No promises, but I'm open to the idea. Her joy was palpable. Lily will be over the moon, she said. She's already planning where to take you in the city. The apartment was smaller than my house, of course, but it had large windows that flooded the rooms with light, a small balcony where I could plant herbs and flowers in pots, and a view of a park where children played. I signed the lease that day. Telling Ryan was harder. He'd grown accustomed to the new version of me, the one who stood her ground but still lived where she always had, still maintained the physical touchstone of his childhood. You're really doing this, he said when I told him, his voice a mix of disbelief and something like respect. I am, I confirmed. The house goes on the market next week. What about your things, your furniture? I'm taking what matters. The rest can go. It's just stuff. Ryan, he was quiet for a moment. Will you be happy there? The question touched me. Not what about us or how will this affect the family, but a genuine concern for my happiness. I think I will, I told him. It feels right. Then I'm happy for you, he said, and I believed him. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of sorting, packing, decisions about what to keep and what to let go. It was liberating, this shedding of accumulated possessions. Each item I released felt like putting down a weight I hadn't known I was carrying. I kept Thomas's favorite chair, our wedding photos, the quilt my grandmother had made. I kept the clay figure Noah had given me, Olivia's drawing, Lily's rainbow crayon house. I kept what mattered, what held true meaning, and released the rest. The house sold quickly to a young couple expecting their first child. They loved the big backyard, the mature trees, the quiet street. I liked the idea of a new family beginning their story where mine was ending. Moving day arrived bright and clear, a perfect June morning. Ryan and the children came to help, along with Denise from church and several friends from my art class. Jasmine and Lily decorated my new apartment with welcome signs and a pot of yellow daisies for the balcony. By evening, when everyone had gone and I was alone in my new space, I felt a profound sense of peace. The rooms were arranged to my liking, familiar treasures finding new homes on unfamiliar walls. Through the open windows came the sounds of the city-distant traffic, children's laughter from the park, music from someone else's apartment. I made a cup of tea and sat on my small balcony, watching the sunset over the park. Tomorrow, Lily would show me her favorite ice cream shop. Next week, I'd start a new art class at the community center a few blocks away. Ryan and the children would visit on Sunday for dinner. Life would go on, different but good. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from Ryan. The house feels empty without your things, but I'm glad you're where you want to be. Love you, Mom. I smiled, typing back, love you too, always. As twilight deepened into night, I thought about the long journey that had brought me here, from that cold December phone call to this warm June evening, from invisibility to self-recognition, from giving too much to giving just enough, including to myself. It hadn't been easy, this transformation. There had been moments of doubt, of loneliness, of wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. But with each step forward, each boundary maintained, each new connection formed, the path had become clearer. I wasn't just Margaret Williams, mother of Ryan, grandmother of Olivia and Noah, widow of Thomas. I was Margaret Williams, artist, friend, neighbor, woman standing firmly in her own light. The Christmas that wasn't had become the gift I never expected, not wrapped in shiny paper or tied with bows, but wrapped in clarity and tied with courage. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, I made a silent toast to that gift, to the painful awakening that had led to this peaceful evening, to the family I'd lost and found in new ways, to the self I'd reclaimed after years of willing invisibility. And if you've ever sat beside an untouched dinner, stared at a phone that didn't ring, waited for a knock that never came, you already know this story. You already carry the ending in your chest. You don't need to be chosen to matter. You don't need permission to stop giving to those who won't see you. You are not a backup plan, not a seasonal accessory, not someone's convenience. You are the whole thing, the home, the light, the gift. If this story found something in you, a memory, a sigh, a strength, then share it, not for me, for the others still sitting with wrapped gifts and unanswered calls. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know it's never too late to choose yourself. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and be sure to check out two other stories that are channel favorites: The Wedding Dress She Never Wore and The Inheritance Letter.